Hi everyone, my name is Tyler and I'm here to help you get into your new 40k army. 40k as a hobby can be very expensive to get into, but my goal with this series is to help you get a full army going without having to break the bank. Before we dive into the list, let's talk about some basic rules that we're going to be using for the list building process here. Our first goal is going to be to keep it affordable and utilize box deals. For everything that we're going to be looking at today, we're going to be looking at it from an MSRP value from Games Workshop themselves. Now, I don't recommend buying everything MSRP from Games Workshop. Often, local hobby stores, eBay, Amazon, things of that nature will have much better deals for the kits that I'm about to show you. Our second goal is that we're going to be making the list in steps, starting at 500 points and working our way up to 1,000 points, 1,500 points, and 2,000 points. Our third rule is we're going to be avoiding Forge World and Finecast. Many Forge World models are often very pricey for the points that they provide you on the table, and the resin used can be hard to work with, especially for beginners. As far as Finecast goes, I just don't think that they're quite as high quality as the plastic models that you can get otherwise. Our fourth goal is to aim to make lists with decent competitive viability. We're going to be trying to make lists that can do well at casual tournaments, in your games with friends, or maybe even get you some wins at major tournaments. Our fifth and final rule is the most important one. Just because I don't mention a model in my list, it doesn't mean that it isn't good. The most important thing that you can do is collect models that you think are cool. There's an entire side of the hobby that has nothing to do with playing, and if you don't like the models you're painting and building, you're not going to get the most out of this hobby. So let's talk about who the Grey Knights are before we get into the list building. The Grey Knights are a hyper-specialized Space Marine Legion focused in fighting off demonic forces. Their entire legion has psychic abilities, making them very close to your traditional paladin clad in shining armor, sword and shield in hand, casting holy spells. Unlike other Space Marine Legions who get their genetic data from Primarchs, the Grey Knights get their genetic data directly from the Emperor of Mankind. They are a secret society who will kill off anyone who learns about them. If the Grey Knights show up to a battle against demons and you're fighting in it, you're not really any safer than before they got there in the first place. The Grey Knights have a very Knights of the Round Table feel to them. If the idea of King Arthur with a Glock fascinates you, you're probably going to be happy with the Grey Knights. So let's talk about the pros of collecting Grey Knights. They are quite possibly the most dollar-efficient army to get into. The Grey Knights currently have an amazing combat patrol, with anywhere between 620 to 660 points of models in the kit without enhancements. Units inside of Grey Knights can very easily proxy for one another, or be magnetized to switch out entirely. At this point in time, the army is extremely mobile, constantly teleporting around the battlefield to get better advantages on their opponent. The army is very easy to fully paint, thanks to how few models you'll run in your list and their fairly simple color scheme of gray-silver. The units are also very close to each other in points, so if you decide that you don't like a particular unit, you can change them out with a different unit of that same type, but really not have to change your list all that much, maybe 5 or 10 points here or there. But, like any army, there are also cons to collecting Grey Knights. Because Grey Knights are one of the more elite armies in the game, they don't really have a lot of trash units, as every single model is worth a lot of points compared to their other Space Marine counterparts. Additionally, most of the Grey Knight models are older. They aren't really scaled for the current typical Primaris Marines. This means that when you place them on the table next to their brothers from other Primarchs, they aren't really going to feel like they match up in terms of how powerful they really are. The various brother characters do not have a specific model. Instead, you're going to have to do a lot of kit bashing from Space Marine characters in Terminator armor, or strike teams, or Terminator librarians, or things like that. The army has a history of having extremely different playstyles between editions. This means that you'll be getting an army that might play completely differently in 2 years to how it plays right now. Now, let's get to the big Grey Knight leading elephant in the room, Kaldor Draigo. Kaldor Draigo is a very, very powerful model on the table and is extremely cost-efficient points per dollar to buy. The big thing that you're going to notice with this video is Kaldor Draigo is not included in any of the lists that I'm going to be showing you today. That is because Kaldor Draigo is a fine cast model. What this means is he's not going to have that nice rigid plastic that most of the other Space Marines are going to have, and that's going to cause him to be able to bend and break a lot more easily. In addition to that, fine cast models don't glue together with plastic glue quite as well. You will need to use other alternatives to be able to get him to stay together. The other problem with Kaldor Draigo is that he is, in my opinion, a very ugly model. Look at this face. This is a face that not even a corpse emperor could love. Now, with all that said, if you want to run Kaldor Draigo, do not let me stop you. He can slot very easily into any one of these lists by taking out one librarian, one strike team, one interceptor team. It doesn't matter. He's only 125 points, and he does bring a lot of power to the army. Now, let's go ahead and let's take a moment to look at the Grey Knights army rule. The army rule for Grey Knights right now is Teleport Assault. The idea behind it is at certain point values, you'll be able to pick models up off of the battlefield and teleport them around 9 inches away as if they were coming in from Deep Strike. The detachment rule for Grey Knights is Teleport Shunt. Instead of rolling the d6 to see how far you advance when you try to make an advance roll, you just automatically go 6 inches. Now, you also gain the fly keyword, which means that you cannot be move blocked in the event that you decide to move this way. This means that even when your units are not teleporting around the battlefield, they are still going fast. So with all of that out of the way, let's talk about the first list that we're going to be working towards. This is a list that's going to be focused on making the most out of the combat patrol and repeat purchases of it. To start ourselves off, we're going to be buying one Grey Knights combat patrol box. Now, because this box has anywhere between 620 and 660 points of models in it, we are unfortunately not going to be able to include the entire combat patrol in a 500 point list. Instead, we're going to be bringing one Brotherhood Librarian with a Sigil of Exigence, one Terminator Squad with an Ancient Banner, a Narthecium, and a Psy Cannon, and one Strike Squad with Psy Cannon. The Psy Cannons can be swapped out for any special heavy weapon that you choose. I just picked this one because of the popularity of Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines at this time. For the 1,000 point list, we are going to pick up another Grey Knights Combat Patrol. Because it's a 1,000 point list now and we have 2 boxes, we have a little bit more variety in what we want to build our list with. We're still going to be taking the Brotherhood Librarian with the Sigil of Exigence. Our 5-man Terminator Squad is going to be changed to a 10-man Terminator Squad with 2 Psy Cannons instead of 1. We're also going to be adding in one 5-man Interceptor Squad with Psy Cannon. Now, it is important to note that for this Interceptor Squad, it is going to be built as a Purifier Squad instead, and it's just going to be proxied as an Interceptor Squad. This is going to come back around when we get to the 2,000 point list. Rounding it out, we're going to have one Nemesis Dread Knight with Incinerator, Psy Cannon, and a Great Hammer. This is due to the Great Hammer being the best anti-tank option that we have inside of the index. For the 1,500 point list, we are buying a 3rd Combat Patrol. With this 3rd Combat Patrol, we're going to be bringing in a 2nd Brotherhood Librarian, this time with Inescapable Wrath, and we'll be changing the Nemesis Dread Knight into being a Grandmaster in Nemesis Dread Knight with the Incinerator, Psy Cannon, and Great Hammer. We're going to be running one additional 5-man Terminator Squad with Ancient's Banner, Narthecium, and a Psy Cannon, and we're going to be running a 2nd Interceptor Squad with Psy Cannon. Now, if you're on a tight budget, you can end your purchases with that 3rd Combat Patrol and you can get to a 2,000 point list. But thanks to the suggestions from Jack Harpster from the Art of War team, we're going to be adding in one Castellan Crow. In our 2,000 point list, we're going to be running all 3 of the Librarians, we're going to be running Castellan Crow, and we're going to be running the Grandmaster and Nemesis Dread Knight with his Incinerator and Psy Cannon still. We're also going to be breaking up the Terminators into 3 5-mans instead of the 1 10-man. This is because we now have the 3 Librarians who are going to each go in with 1 Terminator unit. The Interceptor team that we were running earlier is going to be changed into a 10-man Purifier team with 4 Incinerators so that Castellan Crow can get the most value out of his pickup that we can possibly fit. And then finally, the 2 remaining Nemesis Dread Knights that we have will be equipped with the Incinerator, Psy Cannon, and Greatsword. Now, just because we have a very good combat patrol doesn't mean that we necessarily will always want to use the combat patrol. If you decide that you do not like the Nemesis Dread Knight for whatever reason and you just want to get mass Terminators, this is going to be the direction for you. We're going to start off by picking up a Librarian and Terminator armor who is going to be kit bashed into being a Brotherhood Librarian. We are also going to pick up 1 box of Strike Squads. And then as the backbone of this list, we have to pick up 1 box of Brotherhood Terminators. Now, this list is going to start off looking the exact same as the Combat Patrol box, with the Brotherhood Librarian, the Terminator Squad, and the Strike Squad all being identical copies. But from this point on, we're going to start seeing some pretty big differences. Looking at the 1,000 point list, we are going to pick up 2 more boxes of Brotherhood Terminators, and that's going to be it for this one. For this list, it's going to be the 1 Brotherhood Librarian, the 1 5-man Terminator Squad with the Ancient Banner, Narthecium, and Psy Cannon, the 1 10-man Terminator Squad with Ancient Banner, Narthecium, and 2 Psy Cannons, the 1 Strike Squad with Psy Cannon, and the Interceptor Squad with Psy Cannon. As we move into the 1,500 point list, we're going to pick up 2 more boxes of Terminator Squads and 1 Chaplain in Terminator armor who is going to be kit bashed into being a Brotherhood Chaplain. For the changes to this list as we move on into the 1,500 points, the Chaplain is going to be equipped with the enhancement Inescapable Wrath. We're also going to be taking the 2 Terminator boxes that we bought, and we're going to be turning them into 1 more 10-man Terminator Squad with Ancient Banner, Narthecium, and 2 Psy Cannons. Important to note is that you will likely want the Brotherhood Librarian and the Brotherhood Chaplain to be going into the 2 10-man Terminator Squads in order to get the maximum effect out of them. As we round this list out at 2,000 points, we're going to pick up 2 Librarians in Terminator armor and 1 more Brotherhood Terminator Squad. It is at this point that if you wanted to, you could pick up Kaldor Draigo instead of one of these Librarians in Terminator armor. For this list, we're going to have the 3 Brotherhood Librarians, 1 with Sigil of Exigence, 1 with Domina Liber Demonica, and 1 with no enhancements. The Chaplain is still going to be equipped with Inescapable Wrath. If you are choosing to pick up Kaldor Draigo for this list, replace the Brotherhood Librarian with Domina Liber Dominica with Kaldor Draigo. Looking past that, we're going to take the last 2 boxes of Terminator units, and we're going to be building them into 1 10-man Paladin squad with Ancient's Banner and 3 Psy Cannons. This is going to give us a lot of options for where we want our characters to go. The 1 Brotherhood Librarian with no enhancements is likely going with the 5-man Terminator squad, but between the 2 10-man Terminator squads and the Paladin, you can decide whether you want them to have the extra charge distance, the reroll charges from Kaldor, or if you want them to have the ability to blink away when shot at from the Librarian with the Sigil of Exigence. And those are going to be the 2 main archetypes of this list that I'm going to be showing for you today. Grey Knights are a very, very cool faction with a lot of unique powers and a lot of very cool design elements to them. As we move through this series, we'll be adding factions to this tier list in order to help keep track of the affordability of certain armies and what we are able to put together for them at the beginning. As a disclaimer, there are some armies that might end up very high on this tier list, as getting started in them is very cost efficient. But as you move past those initial boxes and as you start to widen your collection, they will become vastly more expensive. This is not a tier list on the overall affordability of the faction as a whole, just what we were able to build in our video. For the first video on Tau, they will be placed within the $900 to $1,050 tier, as we were able to make a couple of lists that were under that $1,000 threshold. For the Grey Knights, we were very easily able to get under $600, not just for one list, but for both lists. If you enjoyed this video, or you thought that there was something that I could have done better for it, please let me know. I'm looking to improve as I'm still new and fresh in this series. Thank you for taking your time to watch to the end of this video, and I will see you in the next one.